I have been banned sort of by Twitter. I think it's when I wrote a Forbes article that they didn't seem to like. And then suddenly my follower count and my tweets, like the retweets stopped growing. But I still use it sort of to dump all of my raw ideas. But I think this would be a more interesting way to present those ideas. And some of them are going to be fully formed and some of them are going to be malformed and highly regrettable. So let me pull up the tweets and I'm just going to go through them one by one by one. You know, I've been doing a podcast for a while. I've been getting some really good guests and putting out some of my own ideas. And I just got an email today from Amazon saying that Amazon and Audible are now going to offer podcasts. And I'm like, great, another way to distribute my genius ideas. So, you know, uncharacteristic of me, I decided to read the agreement that they included with the sign-up form. And holy cow. So just to sum up the two crazy things that they include in there. You cannot say or advertise anything that competes with Amazon. And they can do anything they want with your content. They can transcribe it. They can host it on their own servers. They can, stream it. They can insert Muppets and porn characters. I don't know what they could do, but they can do a lot with it. And it was really, really ominous. But you're in this weird situation where there's only a couple of platforms. There's Apple, there's Google, there's, now Amazon that control all the distribution. So it used to be in the past where you would have a few people become celebrities and a few networks that decided who became celebrities and what they were able to say. Well, now it's different because you have many people that are micro celebrities, but you only have a handful of platforms like YouTube and Amazon and Apple and Google that get to decide who actually makes it and who doesn't. And increasingly, they're enforcing content policies. So free speech isn't free speech anymore because it's going to be constrained to whatever those platforms want. And the one where you can't talk about who competes with Amazon is so insane. You know, if you think about it, everyone competes with Amazon. So now they're in retail and every category of retail. Then they're e-commerce. Then they're audio and video content distribution. So if Netflix wanted to take out an ad on your show, well, good luck because that's violating the terms of service. Cloud services, right? So Amazon Web Services. So you can't do anything there. Same thing with books and publishing where they started. Then you can't advertise, a book that didn't get published on Amazon. I mean, depends how loosely they want to interpret this. And now they're in healthcare and wellness. They bought a healthcare company. There's no industry that they couldn't technically ban you from advertising or disparaging them in those ads. It's really crazy. One of the people who commented said, we need an open source directory so we don't rely on Apple and Amazon and all these other companies to discover content. The problem with that is the platforms are tied to the devices. So if you have a Kindle, if you have an iPhone, if you have an Android phone, that's where the App Store is going to be. That's where you're going to get your content. It's not like the old days with Windows where you would have this Wild West where you can get your programs anywhere. These mobile platforms were much, much smarter. So what they did was they locked it all down right from the beginning. You only get apps from the App Store. And yeah, there are some ways you can download apps from other places, but the reality is most people aren't going to do it. And it's the same thing with mobile wallets in payments. Yeah, you want your mobile wallet on people's phones, but the amount of money you have to spend on marketing and promoting it, you would lose money trying to make a wallet into a business. There is no business there, just like there's no business for a third-party app directory. And that's why all of these companies had to play ball with Apple and with Google Pay in order to, get on those platforms and give them a piece of the action. People don't realize how bad this monopoly power is getting. It's getting pretty wild. And none of the regulators, no one in government has any clue how to regulate it properly. They are just stabbing in the dark. And it's all self-interested bullshit anyway. A lot of them are grandstanding. The Democrats think that you could, use some prehistoric laws from monopolies gone by. They don't apply to digital. There's no legal standing for those things because digital stuff is given away for free, but control is still being consolidated for distribution and for these products. So that doesn't work. And then Republicans are kind of petty with their stupid free speech stuff, which is important, but I don't think they understand the underlying reason why it's important. Anyway, so both of them are failing. I'll get into that in some other episode, some other time. Okay, corporate people, how douchey do you want to get? I have seen engaging and empowering in all of your profiles. Listen, I want an engagement and empowerment audit because I'm starting to suspect that I'm not getting the empowerment or the engagement that you're promising me. So I would like I'd like to audit the Fed and I would like to audit your empowerment and engagement. Can you just say for real what you do? And if you can't use real words, you're not necessary. You're worthless. You just pack it up, shut down Zoom and go home. All right. God, I'm angry. I saw this posted earlier and it made sense. Someone said, look, COVID is a national security emergency, but yet TikTok is an app for making short dance videos, but we're declaring martial law on it. And look, there's truth to that. I think TikTok could be a problem because obviously you don't want China having access to our youth. And I'm not so worried about the data part of it. I'm more worried about the ability to shape narratives, but that's more of a long-term thing. Anyway, let's put it this way. It can wait. But realistically, I started thinking about it. I think Sarah Cooper is responsible. Those lip sync videos of Trump, I'm sure he watched one of those and goes, listen, we got to shut this thing down. And I think that's what's happening. I think Sarah Cooper is our secret weapon. I think we should then deploy her against COVID. And after that, we should deploy her against those Chinese telemarketing calls. First of all, what are those calls meant to accomplish? Like, what are the chances you speak Chinese? I know you've all gotten them, right? You pick up the phone. The number looks like half of it looks like your phone number. So you're like, oh, my evil twin is calling me. And you pick up and you go, hello, Steve? Evil Steve? And it's like, oh, and you're like, what? How is that even supposed to work? So I don't know why they keep doing it, but someone must be going, all right, I mean, it's Chinese and I don't understand it, but I better give them my bank account information. Anyway, Ellen DeGeneres reportedly fat-shamed a young boy in the 1970s. Well, I have a confession to make. I was that young boy. Ellen fat-shamed me. She hurt me. She called me tubby wubby. I mean, she was bathing me at the time, which was weird, but okay, tubby wubby is very insulting. I'm a young boy and it's, it does terrible things to you. And I don't know, maybe they've manifested in adulthood and I don't even know it. I mean, there's a couple of cats buried in my yard, but that can't be because of Ellen. I mean, it could. Maybe it is. Anyway, I think we should take her down. Ellen's been around forever. And I'm sure if she is as horrible as people say she is, she's been horrible for like 10, 15, 20 years. So why is it just now that everyone is so determined to cancel her? I suspect it's because of that photo of her or video of her hanging out with George W. Bush. I think that kind of triggered everything and she sort of defended it, which, these days with the polar politics that we have, I'm not shocked. So pets are a great market. When everyone is locked down, so if you have a dream of starting a business and you enjoy animals, man, this is a great time to get creative and go hard after that business. I saw a thing today where this guy who's an architect was designing these amazing cat houses. I would show it to you, but I honestly don't care. And realistically, if you ever see me designing cat houses, institutionalize me immediately because something went horribly wrong. And anyway, but it's a great market because now people are home a lot and a lot of people are lonely and they're going to need a pet to, pretend like, they have a kid or a friend or whatever it is that they're lacking in their lives. So this is kind of wild. There's only 5 companies, and they're all tech companies, that are driving the entire stock market or this like recovery, so to speak. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, and Google are up, I think it says 35%. And the S&P overall is minus those stocks. The S&P is down 5% for the year. So really, the concentration of capital is just going all into these companies. And the more capital these companies have, the more power they have. So we're going to see a lot of acquisitions, more so than we've seen before, and disproportionate pay and inequality and all that other stuff, because the market is just chasing these tech companies. And realistically, they're best positioned for a world where everyone sits at home. And no wonder they're pushing all of these solutions, because they want you to stay home or they want you to not come into the office. In fact, they would prefer the pandemic never ended. And the more fearful we are in staying at home, the better it is for them. And the numbers prove it. So you're familiar with the book Green Eggs and Ham. It came out in 1960. You know how many copies it sold? 8 million. That's nothing. Taylor Swift poops out an album and that thing sells millions and millions and millions in, I don't know. I don't even know if it sells, but whatever the equivalent of downloads is. But, Joe Rogan gets that many downloads in a week, probably double that. I talked about this. I have a really good 2-part series on the future of media on the podcast, the McFuture podcast. Actually, I should brand this somehow. Anyway, but I go through all the zombies, the media entities that think they're still alive and act like they're still alive, but are actually dead. And one of the ones I talked about is the written word. It's been devalued like crazy, and recreational reading has plummeted. The number of people who read even a book a year is nothing. I mean, I cited the statistic in that episode. I don't remember what it is, but it is nothing. And the fact that this book, which has been around for, 80 years, is 8 million copies, books are dead. I mean, books are so dead. There's a thing that comes out on a website called Product Hunt, which is usually, by the way, don't say Product Hunt too many times consecutively because YouTube will ban you and so will Facebook. They just came out with another tool on there that makes Reddit look presentable. And I'm like, have you ever seen, besides Craigslist and Reddit, 2 more atrociously designed websites and more people trying to develop front ends for them? I'm like, if someone even develops one halfway decent front end, why wouldn't one of these companies just hire them? I don't know if they don't care, or if there's something cool about not giving a crap. I guess maybe it's like that hot girl that doesn't want you and you want her more because she doesn't want you. I'm sure it's the same thing with guys. Okay, there's an article in Bloomberg today talking about how New York and San Francisco won't just bounce right back. And I've been saying that for a while. They're not just going to bounce right back. First of all, New York has been bleeding residents for the last 5 years, maybe more, but at least 5. And they've lost, a couple of million people over that period. So people were already on their way out. Imagine that now with the pandemic and the huge budget shortfall. I mean, all the stuff has to be paid for. Right now, and this is insane, de Blasio is paying $175 per person per night across New York City hotel rooms to house the homeless. First of all, how these hotels allowed it, I have no idea. And how he couldn't negotiate a better rate. I mean, maybe the amount he's paying is for them to say, hey, we'll let homeless people in, because otherwise it would be insane. That equates to $830 million a year if they end up getting housed for the year. There's 13,000 of them. Someone's going to have to pay for them. Someone's going to have to pay these bills. I saw de Blasio on TV the other day, and he was saying how, oh, the rich are, getting richer. We need to tax the rich. I'm like, are you kidding me? Every rich person I know has escaped the city, and a lot of them are not coming back. And same thing in California. You saw Elon Musk is leaving, Joe Rogan is left, a whole bunch of other people they're gone. They're going to Texas, they're going to Florida, they're going to a bunch of other places. So you need to be thinking about incentives, not higher taxes, because these people are already sort of teetering on the edge of coming back. They're not coming back, a lot of them. So many companies are going to decrease their footprint in Manhattan and just in offices in general because more people will be working from home. There's no reason for all these people to live in Manhattan, not with all this nonsense that they're going to have to go through with getting into buildings and elevators and distancing and putting up with people coughing on them on the subway. And coughing is the best thing you could hope for on the subway. I mean, I've seen defecation and peeing and masturbating, everything I've seen on the subway, no joke. So, coughing would be a delight compared to, historical excretions. But now that cough is probably infected, so not as great. And San Francisco, I mean, hypodermics everywhere on Market Street. There were $4,000 studio apartments and a bunch of homeless living on the street and hypodermics everywhere. And California failing to do anything about that. And this was before the pandemic. I mean, really, these guys got to wake up. They got to be thinking about incentives. They got to be turning New York and San Francisco into the cleanest, most amazing Disneyland on earth and COVID-free. I had predicted, I called it 555 prediction, but I think that the average age of a city resident, a big city, is going to drop by at least 5 years over the next 5 years. In 20 years, Texas is going to be the most populous and prosperous state because they don't have a state tax, and a lot of people are going because now that you don't have to, sit around. And yes, New York is still attractive to young people maybe and ones who don't care about COVID, but it's going to take time for it to rebuild. And in that time, I think a lot of older people or people with families are going to look for other places to live. And I think Texas is going to be one of them. So I think that's like a 60% probability. This idea that you can infinitely tax billionaires are global. They're not local. These are people who can get a visa with one phone call and go to any country they want. In fact, they probably already have residences in New Zealand and all these European countries. You think you're going to be able to just tax them and all that money is just going to come in? In fact, France tried this years ago, and they put in, I think, a 75% top tier tax rate. Did not work. It took in, I think, a third of what they expected it to bring in because people just left or they hid their money, and the rich people already hid their money. All these taxes, and by the way, all the costs of the pandemic are going to be on us. It's going to be on middle class people. Those are the only people who are stupid enough to pay and who aren't rich enough to hire lawyers. Oh, right. This is interesting. A while back, I was talking about, I don't know, in an article I wrote, Amazon is getting so big, it's almost like a country of its own. And it's starting to dwarf the size of its suppliers like UPS and FedEx. So it was just inevitable that they were going to get into the delivery business. And a lot of people thought that it would be just for the last mile, where that, little tiny truck will show up, it's autonomous, and then it poops out a bunch of drones, and then the drones, drop the boxes, and then then the redneck right-wingers shoot the drones down, that kind of thing. But now more and more of these delivery trucks are all Amazon. They're basically taking over their whole value chain. UPS and FedEx, they're going to have to hope, A, that these other competitors grow, B, root for the pandemic, realistically, because the more people are home, the better it is for delivery services. And also, 3, develop other capabilities that attract new customers. One is logistics, which they do for a lot of companies, but there has to be more because Amazon's a big, big, big customer. Okay, I try not to post political stuff, but Trump just signed an executive order, which may not even be legal, to give people $400 a week extra instead of the $600 that they were getting for unemployment. Look, politicians love that, and they love it especially during election years. There's nothing better than giving people money in an election year. But there's a price to be paid, and we're going to be paying it. In corporate, this happens all the time. People know that the consequences of bad decisions or bad investments are going to be paid by someone else down the road. And you can get the glory of kicking off some new project or giving out some new payment. And then some person 2-3 administrations from now is going to have to deal with the fallout. And there will be a fallout. The amount of money that is being printed is so insane that people are almost having to put their money into stocks or into something else that's going to hold on to its value, not bonds, because bonds are being devalued too because they're denominated in dollars. So you basically have no choice but to put your money into something, because at least then, if it's a company, the prices of their products are going to have to rise equivalent with inflation. But there's going to be a price to be paid, and the dollars you have in the bank aren't worth shit or worth already a fraction of what they should be. We just don't know it yet because there's so much turmoil and so many things are still up in the air with the pandemic. We're going to see asset value inflations first and then inflation in other prices. There's also a possibility of deflation, but this is so unusual. It's impossible to even guess which way it's going to go. Yeah, I saw someone with a title today online, Ethnic Studies Math Teacher. Let me say that again. Ethnic Studies Math Teacher. There's no punctuation between those things, so it's not Ethnic Studies and Math Teacher. No. So apparently, if you're a different race, you get a different math. And there's been this whole thing, and if you're not on Twitter, you are so lucky. I wish I could be you. I envy you. I kiss your feet virtually right now. But it is so insane that I can't even believe I have to say this, but there are people legitimately online making the argument that 2 + 2 does not equal 4, that it depends on the situation. Now, I'm going to do a series on the podcast going much deeper into this, not into the equation specifically, but into the underlying strategy that is going on and why this is an actual argument. But there are people trying to undermine reality. And it is really insane. And this was a legitimate argument online. There's a bunch of people with blue check marks on Twitter who are making this argument that 2 + 2 could equal 5, could equal 90, whatever you feel. And the person who posted one such argument, that was her title, Ethnic Studies Math Teacher. So the premise being that different ethnicities can see math differently. We are deep into clown world. We really are. There are a bunch of multi-billion-dollar acquisitions of AI companies. This was written from the perspective of the startups saying, hey, isn't the environment great to get acquired? And realistically, most startups get acquired, or at least the successful ones, the ones that go to like a second or third round. And, but if you look at the flip side of that equation, there's only a handful of companies, the 5 that I named, that are buying up all of this stuff because they have all the capital. So they're creating a monopoly on AI. And it's not all going to happen at once. It's not like all of a sudden you walk in and Bob's a robot. Hey, where's Bob? And, and there's, just like a machine or worse, they didn't even bother to humanize it with like a robot head and a body. It's just like a box that's sitting there. Or it just, they wrote where the box is located and you go into a room and there's like 5,000 boxes that represent each employee that is no longer needed. And that's not how it's going to go down. the way it's going to go down is exactly like driving. So, people think, oh, autonomous driving, I'm just going to buy a car with autonomous driving. No, you're going to buy something like a Tesla, if not a Tesla, and you're going to go into neutral. And they have a mode right now, which is semi-autonomous on Teslas, which also kills a lot of people who have way too much faith in their technology. And they even tell you, hey, it's not fully autonomous. And a bunch of geeks are like, no, I'm going to have my coffee and read the paper. No, that's not how it works. But what happens is you get periodic upgrades, or the next model has a little bit more automation. Maybe it self-parks, and then the other one keeps you in the lane, and the third one makes sure that it can swerve in the right direction or adjust a swerve when there's another car in another lane. Anyway, so what happens is these tiny little incremental improvements, and then before you know it, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm not even driving. In fact, one day it just is no wheel. So it's going to happen gradually, but it's going to happen. And there are going to be a handful of companies that control a lot of that technology. And I'm just giving you cars as an example. It's going to happen across industries. And these companies, because they have such huge distribution, they're going to be able to put it into their existing supply chain and distribution chain. So if it's Microsoft or if it's, Google, they already have so many users. They already have such a huge footprint in all these industries that all they have to do is just start, upgrading the systems and software that they already have. They don't have to introduce a whole new product and develop a whole new distribution chain. That's why it's going to happen so stealthily. We're not even going to notice, and it's going to happen quickly. Yeah, there was some good news in the job front that unemployment listings are now 5.9 million. Oh, sorry. Not unemployment. You don't list unemployment. It's like, hey, we have all these unemployed people at our company. We took out an ad. That's not what I mean. But basically, the number of job openings that people are posting is much, much higher. So it's actually good news. I don't know the quality. So that's the thing. They don't really get into the quality of the jobs. I mean, for all I know, it's more delivery people and, another sort of low-paying job. Oh, I'm sorry, heroes. These are heroes. We need heroes. Because if we call you a hero, we don't have to pay you. We just applaud and then we can congratulate ourselves. Hey, job well done. I've applauded. I mean, what else is there, right? I mean, we don't have to pay these people or give them benefits or healthcare. We applauded, right? I mean, and then you just go to the bodega and you say thanks, take your chips and go home. There was an article in The Verge, which is a tech blog, and this woman who, has kind of a spotty record. She was a very controversial hire because she had she's Asian and she had a lot of anti-white tweets that she later claimed were jokes, which I read were not great comedy. I mean, they wouldn't do well at the Comedy Cellar. Let's put it that way. Anyway, so she's very, she's not America's best friend. Let's put it that way. She has a very negative view of the country. But she wrote an article equating China with the US regarding the ban of TikTok. And this guy who writes a tech blog, he made a good point. This is his quote. He said, "There was some discussion on Twitter over the weekend about articles suggesting equivalence between the US and Chinese governments. While disappointing, I took solace in the knowledge that the authors of such articles could state their opinion without fear of arrest, which is what happened today to the publisher of Hong Kong's Apple Daily." So today, China, which took over Hong Kong, arrested a guy who published a pro-democracy publication. Don't ever equate China and the US. If you live in the West, you would hate the world that they've created. The social credit score, the lack of freedoms and free speech. This couldn't happen in China, not freely in any way. They've got concentration camps for the Uyghurs, I think they're called, which, is that not the people who are white and try to do rap music? Anyway, yeah, so went to a Thai place last night in the burbs, which, by the way, I'm done going to Thai places or anything exotic in the burbs. Where I live, It's Italian food or die. I mean, literally, if you want anything else and you try to eat it, you will die. And this place was kind of nice. It was outdoors. They had a little garden set up. And the food was very mediocre. But as soon as you walk in, the staff are all wearing the masks around the face. Then they've got the visors, those glass visors. and then they make everyone do the hand sanitizing before they walk in. And for a second, I'm like, maybe I wasn't in a Thai restaurant. Maybe I was at a hospital that was trying to diversify its revenue streams, because it was way, way more antiseptic than any other environment I've been in years or in my whole life. So I'm going to wrap it up with this one. Colleges are in trouble. Everyone is reevaluating the value of college. And since these colleges went virtual, I think the stat was 20% of people have deferred. They basically said, hey, I'm not going to go online for a Zoom class and pay you 40 grand. You have to be insane. And that's because people are now starting to wake up to what the real value proposition of education is. And I'm going to go into that in another episode, so I don't want to go too deep into it. But I think that's one of the positives to come out of the pandemic, which is people are finally realizing the things that we valued aren't that valuable, and the things that we didn't value are more valuable. Now, it's going to take some force and some determination to make those adjustments in a meaningful way in terms of salaries or benefits or some other form of appreciation. That's it. I'm going to try to do these regularly. So usually I tweet 5 to 10 tweets a day, and I'm going to try to get deeper behind those tweets and some of the trends and ideas that are going on in my head that can't fit into 240 characters or whatever it is. Anyway, check out the podcast. There's so much cool stuff that I'm going to be putting on the McFuture. I'll also put the audio of this on the podcast. Anyway, so I'm going to try to do more of these Mistweeted by Steve, and hopefully you enjoy it. That's where I dump all my early thoughts and bad ideas. And now here, hopefully half of this was regrettable. Anyway, talk to you next time.